Welcome to the Brainiate Show, where we talk about all things Salesforce, sharing the coolest features, solutions, and best practices to turn you into a Salesforce rock star. Here's your host, former attorney turned Salesforce consultant and trainer, David Giller.
Hello and welcome, everyone. So I'm noticing now that there's that's bothering me. Hang on one second over here. Okay, that's better. Happy Tuesday, everyone. I hope you are doing well. For those of you who are new to the Brainiate Show Live, welcome. For those who are returning, it's great to see you again. For those of you who don't know me, my name is David Giller. I am a Salesforce consultant and trainer. I help companies that are struggling with some Salesforce-related problems in order to help optimize Salesforce for their organization. Today, we are going to be talking about a topic that is, first of all, near and dear to my heart for sure, but is also admittedly the source of a lot of memes and snarky, funny kind of stuff that I often post online because I'm trying to take the negative, frustrating aspects of technical debt in Salesforce and it's part of reality. That's what we have to deal with in Salesforce, and everyone's got some level of technical debt. The question is, how bad is it? And I try to turn it into something that's a little bit more lighthearted, a little bit more fun, because in the end, we've got to clean it up anyway. We really do have to address it, but we might as well at least laugh at ourselves or laugh at the people who created the technical debt that we're trying to clean up, or laugh at the situation to try to make the most of it. So without further delay, I'm going to jump in to the heart of the topic. So for today, we're going to be talking about how to minimize technical debt in Salesforce. How to minimize technical debt in Salesforce. So the first segment of the show, basically, I'm going to talk about the concepts associated with technical debt and share best practices and strategies on how to deal with it. This second segment is where I'm going to actually show you some tools, and as I will make clear in a little bit as we progress on the first segment, there really is no magical tool. It is, in the end, it is a lot of hard work. There's a lot of research, a lot of CSI kind of work that we all have to do as it relates to any technical debt. There definitely are some tools out there that can help us along the way, help us to document our findings, help us to identify areas where we need to delve a little bit deeper to explore potential technical debt and to make the best decisions that we can for our colleagues and everyone on the team who's actually using the Salesforce instance that we're maintaining. So the first segment, we're going to be talking about the concepts about it, the best practices. The second segment, I'm going to be showing you some of the tools. And by the way, the three things that I'm going to show you, the three resources that I'm going to show you about resolving technical debt, they're completely free. So I'm not trying to sell you on anything here. The third segment is open Q&A. So if you've got any questions, whether it's about technical debt or anything else that's Salesforce related, to the extent that I am able to answer your questions, I will. So at any point, if you've got any questions, as you can see from the scrolling ticker down below, just start it with a Q so it stands out. This way I know that you're not just putting a response or a comment to somebody else's comment. So just start it with a Q, and this way it can stand out, and I will address it in the last segment. Okay, so let's start talking about the best practices and strategies around technical debt. So the first thing that we really need to uncover is, what is technical debt and why should we even care about it in our Salesforce instance? So in a nutshell, by the way, there are some areas where technical debt it's not as obvious that it is technical debt. So there is some gray area to it. It's not always black and white. What is technical debt? In a nutshell, technical debt is any type of configuration element that we have in Salesforce that is no longer needed. It's not serving any purpose, any valuable purpose for anyone on the team. So it could be something as benign and very no big deal and mildly annoying, like a field or an extra button or an extra link that appears somewhere in Salesforce, on the homepage, on the footer, on the navigation bar, something that appears somewhere that nobody really needs. It does not really keep anyone awake at night. It really does not interfere with their workday. It is not overwhelmingly distracting to them. But in the end, that is technical debt. Now, we take that is probably the most granular, innocent version of technical debt that I can think of. But as that grows over time, so it's not one field or button or link, but 10 fields or buttons or links, or 20 or 30 or 50 or 100 fields that you might have on a particular screen that nobody is using. Nobody understands why it's even there. And people start saying, I hate Salesforce because when I go to the account screen, context screen, opportunity screen, activity screen, whatever it is, I've got all these fields here that not only are they so distracting to me, basically to the equivalent of web ads, like banner ads on the web that you just look for any app that can help minimize or hide them. But even if you're not using any app to hide those banner ads, you are mentally blocking them out. So people will often say that, yeah, when I go to the opportunity screen, I have all of these different fields, this whole section or multiple sections appearing on the screen, and I have absolutely no clue what they are, and it is really distracting. And maybe buried within those sections, there are one or two pieces of information that I do need. It makes it really hard to find, let's say, the name of the account that the opportunity is with, or the target date that I'm supposed to be focusing on, because it's buried among all of this other garbage that appears on the screen. Well, why should you care about technical debt? Because when the users start complaining about things like that, and again, I'm just giving you a very simplistic example of extra fields that appear on any screen. When users start complaining about that, guess what? There are so many other users that are not even taking the time to complain, and instead, they're simply not using Salesforce. And instead, they're using a spreadsheet, they're using their inbox, they're using clipboards of paper or paper notebooks. They're using anything but Salesforce. So why should you even care about that? Well, if that continues, senior management is going to say, why bother with Salesforce? Salesforce is no longer the record of truth. People are frustrated by using Salesforce. Everyone complains that Salesforce sucks. People struggle when a new person gets on board. They struggle to learn how to use Salesforce. Why should we bother paying for licenses? Why do we need all of these apps? Why do we need all of these Salesforce developers and admins on the team? It sucks. And they're just going to move over to another tool. And in some way, if nobody addresses the technical debt, to some regard, I can't blame them. But at the same time, it's not the fault of Salesforce. That has nothing to do with the Salesforce platform of why that technical debt is there. That technical debt ignored, if that same technical debt gets introduced into any other system that they use and it continues to get ignored, they will say that the other system sucks just as much. So what is technical debt? It's any feature that exists in Salesforce that some users, doesn't even have to be all users, that some users are able to see it. They have to navigate through it. They have to jump over a couple of obstacles, humps, in order to ignore the nuisance, the noise that exists in the system in order to access the features and the data and the parts of the system that they actually need to do their job. So the definition of technical debt is not necessarily that it applies to everyone in the organization, even if it applies to only 3 people in the organization, and those 3 people are the entire sales team. The folks in marketing don't care. They don't have that issue. The folks in customer service don't have that issue. Management doesn't have the issue. But only those 3 users out of maybe 30 users, only 3 users have the issue. It is still technical debt, and it still must be addressed because the outcome is going to be the same as what I described earlier. Okay, so now let's move on. Let's talk about the potential consequences of not resolving technical debt in a timely manner. So I called out some of them, but there are actually others. For starters, everything takes more time. It takes far more time to create reports. If, let's say, you need to group your accounts based on their industry, and you happen to have 4 different fields in the system, all with the label of industry. How do you even know, as the Salesforce admin, how do you know yourself which of those fields with the exact same label on it, how do you know which one should be used in your report for the filtering or for the grouping in your report? How about updating page layouts? If you as the admin are asked to update a page layout for, let's say, the opportunity, and you go to the opportunity object in Salesforce, you go into setup, and there are 35 different page layouts, and all of them have very vague names that it is really difficult, if not impossible, to tell who is, for what purpose those page layouts were created, who is using those page layouts, and in what context are they using those page layouts, let alone you're navigating through a lot of page layouts that maybe are not assigned to anyone and nobody is seeing. You as the admin, you have no idea which of all of those page layouts you actually need to update in order to do something that should otherwise be incredibly simple. Or how about a situation when a new user comes on board and you're trying to figure out how to set up that user? Let's say it's a new member of the sales team, and there are already 200 people on the sales team. And this person is now employee number 201 on the sales team. And within sales, you might also have 200 roles and 200 profiles and 200 page layouts for the account screen. Because everyone feels that they're special. Everyone wants their own role, their own profile, their own record type, their own page layout, and you are sitting there pulling your hair out, not only trying to figure out how you're going to set up that new user, but then it's your responsibility to train that user on how to use the system. So everything takes more time. Scaling up the business becomes far more challenging if the technical debt is not resolved. As new business units come on board, if your company suddenly purchases another company, so there's a merger and an acquisition taking place, and what worked before is now no longer scalable based on the magnitude of the growth of the organization, the little annoying technical debt now becomes a showstopper. So as I mentioned before, what will happen if you just ignore it, users will eventually give up. Senior leadership will eventually give up on Salesforce. Everyone is going to wonder, why should we even bother with Salesforce? Because it's too complicated and it's too difficult to use. So now let's talk about how you can identify the sources of technical debt in your instance. There are a couple of key areas. In theory, you can have technical debt everywhere. I'm going to call out right now the most common areas of where you can find technical debt in your instance of Salesforce. First, start looking at the installed packages and the connected apps that you have in Salesforce that are no longer needed. You might have people on the team might have tried out Conga or DocuSign or Box or Tableau, and it's just not needed anymore. They decided not to move forward with it. but they decided to try it out in production. So it's in production, and it's actually taking up real estate on the screen, on various screens that for those users who were assigned the appropriate permissions in order to try it out, although the trial long expired or the contract expired in the past, and it's still lingering there. So look at the installed packages and the connected apps that you have in the system that are no longer needed. Next, take a look at the objects that you have that are no longer needed by the organization. So it could be at one point in time, someone decided to create a custom object for zip codes or for countries, and it's just not needed anymore. Nobody's touching it. Nobody's using it. When you ask around, nobody has any clue whatsoever what those objects are for, and you cannot find any justification for keeping it around anymore. So look at objects that are no longer needed. Next, start looking at the roles, the profiles, and the permission sets that are no longer needed. Not only are they not assigned to anyone, but we don't anticipate that we will have a need in the near future to reassign those roles, profiles, or permission sets to anyone else on the team, whether they're already employed by the organization or even if they were to be employed in the future. Next, let's take a look at some automation elements that are no longer needed. Now, in this context, I'm actually going to define automation elements in a broad way. Automation elements can also include things like validation rules. Now, are validation rules like automation? Like technically, no, it's not like it's a workflow rule or a process builder or a flow. But under the general definition that you'll find in a dictionary, yeah, a validation rule will automatically trigger something, an error message, to a user when certain conditions are met. So validation rules. I am willing to bet that you have validation rules. I'll say it this way. If your organization has had Salesforce for more than 3 years, I am willing to bet that you have at least one validation rule, if not more, you might have a ton, that are inactive and it's just sitting there as clutter. Now you might say, what's the harm? Even for you as an admin, so users will never see those inactive validation rules. But you as an admin, when you are troubleshooting an issue that a user has, where the user says, hey, I don't know what's going on. Every time I do this, I get the following error message. And you're trying to figure out why they're getting that error message on that particular object and that particular record in that particular use case. And you go into that object and you find that there are 25 validation rules and only 2 of them are active. Why do you even need, and by the way, I've done this myself. I don't even realize that they're inactive. And I start drilling into those validation rules that have similar or maybe even identical error messages, but they're inactive validation rules. And it takes me sometimes 20 minutes into the research and I realize, oh, this one wasn't even active. Why did I bother going in here? Well, all you really have to do is if those validation rules are no longer needed, just frickin' delete them, get them out of there. That will make you and everyone else who is an admin in that system far more efficient because you're going to eliminate the clutter under the hood. So validation rules. Next, workflow rules. Approval processes. You might have approval processes that are not active. Nobody's using them. There is no intent whatsoever to use them in the future, or worse, you have workflow rules and approval processes that are sitting on objects that nobody is touching. And it's for use cases, it's to solve for business use cases that are no longer relevant. Or they are associated to objects and records that are still being used. users just don't bother complaining. Users might not have even realized that the records are getting locked and approval requests are getting assigned to different people, or different things are getting automated behind the scenes. Oh, I never noticed that all of those tasks are getting created automatically every time I update the opportunity. This is just so much clutter that's happening behind the scenes, and users just file it in this giant pile of junk, of mystery automation junk that they don't understand why it's happening. And it just adds more and more. Think of it as just adding pebbles onto that side of the scale for them to complain that Salesforce sucks. Salesforce makes no sense. Salesforce is not intuitive. Next, still under the umbrella of automation elements that are no longer needed, lead assignment and case assignment rules. And of course, we have the process builders that are inactive, or they are still active, but they are no longer needed. They serve an old purpose that it's just no longer relevant. We could have lots of flows that are inactive and no longer needed. And of course, there could be a ton of Apex that was introduced into the system that is also no longer needed. Next, we need to start looking at all of the visual force pages that are no longer needed. The page layouts that we don't need. They're not assigned to anyone. Nobody is ever looking at them except for you as the admin. When you need to update page layouts, you never know which ones to look at. And out of the mess of the 40-page layouts that you see available, there are only 2 that are relevant. Get rid of the junk. How about record types that are no longer needed? You can easily find record types that have been long abandoned and they're not assigned to any users, and you can get rid of them. And as I mentioned early on, we have fields that are no longer needed. That is probably the most painful for the end users because it takes up clutter on the screen and it makes using Salesforce on any mobile device far more difficult, and it really frustrates users tremendously. Now, by the way, the easiest way that I have found to help identify technical debt that can easily be resolved, work with any user. And I will say this a couple of times during this live session. Find the noisiest users, the loudest complainers, the folks who say that Salesforce sucks, and sit down with them, whether it's one-on-one, or I would even encourage you to create a group therapy session. Let them invite some of their colleagues and let them share their screen and start showing you why Salesforce sucks. More often than not, they are totally correct because there's clutter on the screen. There's nonsensical stuff going all over in Salesforce. Nobody has trained them on how to use the native out-of-the-box features. So they're coming up with all kinds of creative, improvised ways to get their job done. The folks in sales, I guarantee, they just want to do sales. They want to close deals. They want to find the customers and prospects and deals that they need to follow up with. They don't care about the configuration of Salesforce. They just want all of the clutter gone, and they want ways to quickly and easily find those records that require their attention. Next, how do you prioritize and address your technical debt? So I just gave you a glimpse into my approach, and by the way, it really, really works. Teaming up with those people who are the biggest complainers, that just works wonders, and it creates a fantastic snowball effect in your favor. So first of all, identify the biggest complainers. Second of all, you get bonus points if those biggest complainers happen to be in sales. Why? Because whether we like to admit it or not, the sales folks, they actually bring in the money that pays for everyone else's salary. So it's in your best interest to actually help those folks who are in sales. As I mentioned earlier, feel free to create a group therapy session. The way I have done it, I have done this both in person and virtually. if you can do it virtually. So in person, you are probably going to get the most candid responses, the most candid feedback from people. You'll start to bond with them, like sitting next to them, sitting across the table from them, looking at the same screen, letting them vent. It will be a bonding moment, and they will realize that you're actually trying to help them. The downside of doing it in person is it becomes very difficult to record it. So even if you create like a Zoom meeting and you're recording it because you're both in the same room, you have an echo going on, it can be a little bit messy. So alternatively, if you're not going to do it in person, by all means, do it virtually and create like a Zoom meeting and record it, because that recording you can then go back to harp in on some of the details, like when they point out, yeah, on this screen, and they start circling with their mouse a whole area of the screen of the junk that they don't need. You can actually go back to that moment in time when they're circling with their mouse and pointing it out, or they're using various terminology that you might not be entirely familiar with. But by going back and watching the recording, it will allow you to go back and get additional granular details, to ask more clarifying questions, and it will help you make sure that you accurately heard everything that they described and everything that they showed in the process. So create a group therapy session, let them share their screen in Salesforce, and encourage them to complain about everything that sucks. Now, by the way, at the same time, you need to direct their conversation. By all means, let them complain about everything that sucks. But you also need to direct the conversation so that they are elaborating on what is their process. What process are they using today? Maybe, just maybe, Salesforce, the version of Salesforce that they're using today, actually was perfect for the process that was described or the business requirements that were described at some time in the past. That whoever set it up, whether it was yourself or somebody else, that it matched exactly whatever the business requirements were of the person who shared the business requirements before the system was configured to the state that it's in today, or the condition that it's in today. So as they're complaining, also try to guide the conversation so that you have a deep understanding of what their process is like today. So we want to make sure that they're not focusing the conversation on the equivalent of, hey, you're my web designer. I want this page to look like this, that, and the other thing. I want this to be blue and that to be orange and this to be in a bigger font. No, that's not the conversation that we're having. We're having a conversation about, show me each screen that you're using in Salesforce, identify what is the clutter on the screen that you don't need, what is distracting and annoying to you, what is it that you would like to see, what information would you like to see, or what features would you like to have on this particular screen. And within that context, you're asking the why. And the why ties into the how. Why do they want that? Well, they want it because they need to be able to see when they're talking to a particular customer, they want to be able to see, let's say, all of the open opportunities or the open customer support tickets or all of the campaign history that that customer was part of. And you can show them how using a lot of the native out-of-the-box features that nobody took the time to teach them how to use, that they are easily available in order to show them that kind of stuff. Or it could be something incredibly simple, like creating a report chart and embedding that report chart onto the contact page layout to show them the, let's say, opportunity history from a timeline perspective, to be able to see those kinds of things, and that will help them do their process. So it's not so much about having them, go with their canvas and their paintbrush and they're designing the web page. No, it's not about that. It's about identifying what are the obstacles that are in their way. So take an axe to it and just get it off the screen for them. And what is it that they're trying to accomplish? What is it that they're trying to do when they're on the screen? And how are they doing it today? And how could they potentially do it in the future using more streamlined, native, out-of-the-box functionality that is available on the Salesforce platform. Now, what you also need to do is, based on their feedback, you should definitely start making the aesthetic changes just by removing the clutter from their screens. So before you start deleting fields, what I'm encouraging you to do is remove those fields from the page layout first before deleting the field. There's a big difference between the two. You're hiding the fields from the page layout instead of deleting the field. So first, you simply remove it from the page layout. And by the way, there are a lot of reasons why I'm telling you don't delete it yet, because you don't know who else on the team might be relying heavily on those fields. It could be that the people you're talking to now don't need those fields, and it could be that they really do need those fields, but they're not thinking clearly. They're just going in broad strokes. Get rid of this, get rid of that. I don't need this anymore. Dude, you're telling me to get rid of the address and phone number on the account screen? How are you going to know where they're located? Like, I once had a situation where recently, sales folks told me on the contact screen they wanted me to remove the mailing address, all addresses, actually, all mailing addresses. So what is it? Mailing address, shipping address, billing address, shipping. I don't remember anymore off the top of my head. But they wanted me to remove the actual physical addresses from the contact page layout, and I said, fine, I'm happy to do that. That's totally cool. But do you ever have a situation where maybe you want to be able to send um, a birthday card, a season's greetings card, a gift card of some kind to someone in the mail, swag or something like? Do you ever have a situation like that? Yeah, but it doesn't happen often. Okay, I don't care if it doesn't happen often. If it happens once, where are you going to find that person's address? Where are you going to store that person's address? Like, let's think this through a little bit. Like, I'm not trying to be in your way. I want to make sure that what we're doing, what you're asking for, is what you actually want. So again, what I'm encouraging you to do is listen to their feedback. If they're identifying things as clutter, go ahead, just remove it from the page layout. And sure enough, over time, they might start to realize, like, oh yeah, I need some of that back. And you can simply put it back on the page layout without actually deleting the fields which contain values, like important data that they or others on the team might need. Similarly, start introducing features onto the page layout that they do need based on what they're describing of what their process is and the kind and how they work and the kind of features that they can benefit from. Once you do that, go ahead and review it with that team, the same team that you sat down with, that you did that group therapy session with. Once you've streamlined the page layout, so focus on the aesthetics first, then sit down with them in order to review and see, like, hey, here's what I did based on what you said. Does this work for you? And by all means, do it in a sandbox first. Do not do it directly in production. Let them play around a little bit. And once they feel that it's okay, go ahead and let them make some noise. Because, by the way, the same people who are really loud about complaining, very often they will be your loudest cheerleaders within the organization. Now, while they are doing that, now you can go behind the scenes and to start reevaluating the installed packages and the objects and the roles and the profiles and the permission sets that are no longer needed, the automation that's no longer needed. You can start doing all of that now that you've satisfied that surface level pain for the folks who are using Salesforce. And what you're doing there is you're basically attacking this in from a twofold perspective. You're going behind the scenes and cleaning up the stuff that users are really not seeing after you've already addressed the pain points that the functional users are struggling with. So your user adoption is going to increase. Your data quality is going to get better. Your team members are going to start seeing the real value that you start to bring to the organization as a problem solver, as someone who helps them work more efficiently on the team, someone who actually listens and responds to the frustrations and pain points that they're expressing. So it's going to help you dramatically, not only as it relates to improving your Salesforce instance within your organization and helping everyone else on the team, but it's also going to improve your standing within that organization, and it will help your career in tremendous ways. Next, what are some best practices that I can share for reducing and eliminating technical debt from your Salesforce instance? So as I mentioned before you delete anything, and when I say delete, I'm not talking about from the page layout, I'm talking about truly deleting, like hitting delete on the object or the field. And honestly, even for page layouts, you must confirm, think CYA, you need to protect yourself. You need to confirm with everyone that you can, everyone that you report into, everyone that could be impacted by what you're about to delete. You need to confirm from as many people as possible to determine if it's being used anywhere or if any business users rely on it and why. So I'll give you an example. You might have a field and you do some research and you see that that field was never populated before. Nobody really knows why it's there. And everyone's like, yeah, sure, I guess you could delete it. I don't know what that's all about. It's very possible that that field was placed there to help with some integration where there's automation happening from another system that temporarily populates that field with a particular value, performs the automation, maybe passes information from some external system into Salesforce or from Salesforce into another system, and then goes ahead and deletes, clears out the value in that field as soon as the process ends. So it is very possible that you will never ever find a record that has any value populated in there because it's only in there for a few seconds, if that much at a time, in order for the integration to work. And if you go ahead and delete that field, it is possible that you are breaking the integration. So there are instances like that. There are instances where maybe someone introduced a particular field that relates to an upcoming business process change. So let's say we, for whatever reason, we need to track, let's say, the year that a corporation was, that one of our companies was incorporated, that one of our customer companies was incorporated. Maybe we also need to track the state in which it is incorporated, which might not be the same state in where the main address is that we are tracking. And those fields might be brand new fields on the account object, and they're not yet available on any page layout. Well, you don't know that that came from HR or legal or compliance, or you know nothing about that. And as you start talking to folks, not a whole lot of people are aware of this particular initiative, but it might be a critical part of an upcoming policy that's about to get rolled out to the entire organization. So you definitely need to do a little bit of homework, a little bit of CYA. You cannot rely exclusively on the fact that it's never populated and it's not on any page layouts. You cannot, that is a good indicator that it's probably safe to delete it, but you cannot just rest easy exclusively based on that alone. Next, some best practices for reducing or eliminating technical debt. Give your colleagues updates. Share with them the before, during, and after. Show them, here's what the screens looked like before. Here's what it looks like as I'm cleaning it up. And as you give me more feedback, here's what it could look like. Here's where we could place some of the, let's say, historical metrics or the related records over here on the upper right-hand side of the screen or the lower left-hand side of the screen based on the feedback that you give me, and answer the following questions. Show as many as you can. Show the before and after visuals. It might be based on reports. It might be based on page layouts. It might be based on the homepage. The visuals will take you very far so that the end users can see and better understand the enhancements that you are making on their behalf. Okay, next up, we're going to talk about what tools or resources can help minimize technical debt. And with that, I'm going to switch gears real quick and show you my screen. So that I'm going to show you is Optimizer. And if you are not yet familiar with Optimizer, I will describe what it is. Actually, first what I'll do is let's go here and let's just show you like regular Salesforce. Okay, so we're in as an end user. And in order to find Optimizer, basically, if you've never used it before, go into Setup. And then you're going to go into Quick Find on the upper left-hand side. Come on. And I started typing Quick Find. And you start typing Optimizer. And you go over here, and if it has not yet been enabled, you go ahead and enable it. Over here, I would recommend that you set it up to run monthly, and then you can go ahead and click to open Optimizer. And basically the way it will open is in a console view. It's just going to sort of take you to where I was a moment ago. This is a console view. So if it's the first time that you're running Optimizer, basically when you get to the screen, there's not going to be any content in the middle of the screen. It'll basically be like a button to say, activate or like run Optimizer now. And then there'll be a banner that says it can take up to 24 to 48 hours until the Optimizer results come in. So I actually ran this about an hour ago in preparation for this demo. Prior to that, the last time I ran it in this org was about 2 years ago. And this is a demo. It's a sandbox org. I'm using it. I use it exclusively for training purposes and for demo purposes. So it's not a true, used production instance of Salesforce. So what you're going to see over here, and in a way, it's a shame because I don't have that many errors or issues that need to be resolved, but we're going to use it as a teaching mechanism anyway. So what you're going to see over here is going to be a list of, on the left-hand side over here, this first column, we have all of the features so basically, what is Optimizer? Let me take a step back for a moment. What is Optimizer? Optimizer is a tool. Think of it as like a health check wizard type tool that is baked into Salesforce that will look at the metadata of the configuration elements that you have across your entire system and give you some recommendations and best practices regarding some of the indicators that it found based on your metadata. So we're going to see things like unassigned roles, unassigned page layouts, inactive chatter users. Most people are not going to really prioritize that. Field usage, so issues regarding field usage, user login. So it's going to start calling out those users who haven't logged in a very long period of time. It's going to show you things like unassigned record types, people who are using unsupported browsers. So you're going to have a lot of different things appearing here. Now you're going to see over here under type, and you can certainly you can sort the list based on any column that you have here. So you're going to have the type, and then you're going to have the estimated level of effort for each item. And over here, you can see the status. So you can prioritize those things that are most important all the way to the top. What I'm going to do for now is I'm just going to sort it alphabetically by feature. And I'm going to scroll all the way down over here to show you, just to tie it back into some of the examples that I called out earlier. And I'm not at all trying to say like, oh, these are the most important. What I'm trying to say is these are the most common and super painful elements of technical debt that definitely has a domino effect on your productivity as an admin, let alone the ability for you to serve your end users efficiently. So if I look over here, let's say unassigned custom profiles. And when I click into it, it's now going to show me the actual elements that it found associated to this category. So unassigned custom profiles, I've got 7 profiles that are not assigned to anyone. And that might be perfectly fine. Like, that's okay. We just, let's say, got rid of everyone who's on the customer support team. Customer support is no longer part of this organization. So we're going to be hiring new people next week. And maybe that can explain why none of these are none of these profiles are assigned, or why one particular profile isn't assigned. So you need to look at some of these, and again, you need to ask the legitimate questions of perhaps it's going to be used soon. Perhaps it's just temporary that these were not assigned to someone. It could potentially be totally safe for you to delete some of these. Now, by the way, the standard profiles, it's like this is not showing standard profiles. Standard profiles you cannot delete. And there's actually it's as annoying as that might seem, there's actually good reason for that. Because if at some point you need to set up a user in a particular way, but you don't have as like a typical standard user in Salesforce, but you no longer have a typical standard profile in Salesforce for a typical user because you've already hijacked all of them and changed them up. So this way, by always having the standard profile available and by being able to always clone it, you then have a foundation that you can always work off of and work more efficiently on. So that's my understanding of why you cannot delete the standard profiles. Over here on the right-hand side, you're going to see some recommendations and additional resources to learn a little bit more about this particular topic and this particular configuration element and things that you should consider as it relates to deleting or using these things that are mentioned here. So that's as it relates to unassigned custom profiles. Let's go over here and I'm going to show you another one that we have over here. Here, page layouts per object. Now, this org is not really a problem. So it's not, see, it's showing over here, where am I on the left-hand side? Page layout, here, page layouts per object. It's saying no action required. In other words, there's nothing that's a problem over here. Great job. You use page layouts according to our best practices. But there are many situations where one or multiple objects have an insane number of page layouts. Now, to some degree, that might be completely justified. I don't know. It depends what's going on within your organization. If you're working in a large enterprise organization and you have many different flavors of, let's say, what an opportunity might be and the types of data points that you need on the opportunity page layout, it might be completely justified to have an insanely high number of custom page layouts on a particular object. But here you can see they're totally fine. Let me show you one that a lot of people like to gravitate to. I would say end users like to gravitate to, that I don't think is nearly as troublesome as people make it out to be. And what is that? Unused reports and unused dashboards. Now, why do I feel this? Why do I feel that this is really not a big deal? I guarantee that for every one of you who are watching this video, who are attending the live stream, that if you run Optimizer, you will in fact have unused reports and unused dashboards appearing in your results. And when you click into it, I am willing to bet that you will have a lot of reports that will look just like this when it says last viewed or last run, and it will say never. Never. And by the way, you can see over here, I started this org in 2016. So you can see last modified, like they were never run, many of these never viewed. So for a lot of end users, when they click on the reports tab or the dashboards tab and they see all of the reports or all of the report folders or dashboard folders, they feel a little bit overwhelmed that there's a lot going on there and they never know where to go or what to do. And I understand that. But at the same time, I don't think that is necessarily the best use of your time as a Salesforce admin to clean it up. Why do I say that? Because first of all, you can train your users that whatever reports they need are located in a very specific folder or two specific folders, and that's where they should focus and nowhere else. They don't need to focus on it. They could just ignore everything else. Secondly, if you really wanted to or needed to, you can pull a report of reports and pull a report of all of the reports that have never been run or haven't been viewed in X number of years, and you can either bulk move them into another folder, or like a folder called archives, or you can in theory bulk delete all of them. It's not a big deal. But at the same time, a report, unlike what most people think, a report is not saving the actual data that is appearing when you run the report. When you save a report or a dashboard, it's simply saving the query. Actually, I take it back. With a dashboard, it's a little bit different. It's saving the graphical summary associated to the last time that it was run. But a report is simply saving the filters, the metadata of the report. What are the filtering criteria to tell Salesforce which records to display, and how do you want it displayed? What are the rows and columns and graphs associated with it? It's not saving the underlying data. So it's not like having a gazillion reports is taking up a lot of your storage space in Salesforce. It might feel cluttered to the users, and I get that, and that's why I'm suggesting you can feel free to move them, either delete them or move them into another folder called archive so they don't have to see them. Move them into a folder that they don't have access to see, that maybe only system admins have access to see, and that can take care of that. But otherwise, the Salesforce Optimizer is a fantastic place to get started. It is completely free. I believe it comes with every Salesforce instance. I don't think it's limited to a particular license tier off the top of my head. And a lot of times you're going to find, by the way, practically every client that I work with, the client is never asking me to run this, but I will run this just to see if there's anything glaring that might warrant additional conversation and additional exploration of technical debt that they might not be articulating, but it will show me, like, let's say on a particular page layout, that there are hundreds of fields appearing, and clients sort of got used to it and they just take it as, oh yeah, that's how Salesforce always was, because that's how we set it up from the beginning. But this will at least tell me as their admin where I could look for ways to help improve their system and make it more user-friendly. So Salesforce Optimizer, I totally encourage you to play around with it and start using it. And that should definitely be your starting point. Next, when you are looking, so let's say you're looking at a particular field, so using any of the elements that are appearing in Optimizer, or by having the conversation with the team in sales, let's make believe over here. Let's go into, where am I in setup over here? So let's go into setup over here, and let's go into object manager, and let's go over here on the account, and let's look for any custom field. So here, data quality description. So when I look at this particular field, let me make this a little bit bigger. When I look at this particular field, let's say that some of the folks in sales basically indicated that this is one of the many different fields that they have no idea what it is. They just want me to get rid of it. And they're like, delete it, just delete it already. Come on. Like, removing it from the page layout is not enough. They want like vengeance, kill the damn thing. So what I'll tell you to do before you delete anything, not only have the conversation with everyone, but before you even have a conversation with others to determine, hey, do you know anything about this field? Do you know? First of all, you'll see over here who created it and who last modified it. That might be some indicator as to why it's there, or at least who you can turn to for additional questions. In the perfect world, you've got the description, which is filled out, or the help text, which is filled out, that will give you a little bit more insight on why it's there, who created it, and what it's used for. But we also have natively, and this is only true for custom fields, not standard fields. Where is this used? And when you click on it, it's going to show you if this is used in any flows or process builders or workflows. If it's on any page layouts, if it's on any reports, it will all be listed here. And you will have hyperlinks to all of those different elements that this custom field is referencing. So this is going to be very helpful for you, because everyone that you talk to might say, yeah, I don't know what the heck it is, but it looks like, yeah, I don't need it. I don't know. You could just get rid of it. I wouldn't mind. And then you notice that it happens to be referenced in 15 different flows that are all active in the org. Like, oh yeah, we need to dive a little bit deeper into this. You're not even going to be able to delete it until you first modify each of those flows to remove the reference to this particular field. So make sure to leverage the where is this used button. Next, I want to show you a tool that is completely free. I have no idea who is behind this, or I should say, I never bothered to look who's behind this, but it's called Happy Soup. So let's take this same example over here of data quality description that's on the account. And if I wanted to see, because this will actually show you some stuff that the where is this used is not going to show you. So you go over here and you log in to whichever instance of Salesforce that you want to drill into. So I'm going to choose that instance of Salesforce, allow, and by the way, it's only looking at the metadata. So over here for metadata type, I can say show it's a custom field, and now it's pulling all of the custom fields. And data quality description. Oh, something went wrong. Look at that. Let's see if it'll still work anyway. Data. Nope. Nope. Okay. Maybe I should have tried with a different org. But nonetheless, this is a really good tool. I have no idea what this is all about. Maybe it just doesn't like the org that I'm in because it's an older org. I've used this tool a lot for a lot of different projects, and it's completely free. Basically, you put in, and you can see over here, you can search for any standard objects, any fields, standard fields, any custom fields, any field sets, Apex triggers, Apex classes, visual force pages, so you can very quickly, it'll give you an output with hyperlinks to all of those areas in Salesforce where that particular element is utilized. I absolutely love this tool. Anyway, that's it in terms of the tools that I wanted to show you. There are many other tools that you can utilize from the App Exchange that can help identify areas of technical debt to clean up in your org, as well as the change impact that if you were to change, even if it's something as simple as changing value on a pick list, of what the impact would be just to change a value on a pick list. There are many other tools. I shouldn't say many. There are several other very powerful tools that can help you with that. All of those are paid tools, but I just want to show you in this session, I just want to highlight the free tools that are available to you. Once you feel that you've outgrown them and you need something more, we can absolutely talk about some of the paid tools that are out there. So I heard a lot of dings of, I'm assuming, questions. I haven't looked at any of them yet. Let's switch over to that real quick. And let's see some of the questions that came in. So let's go back a little bit and okay. How do we know if a package is no longer needed? I don't even know how to see if it's not being used. This is where you need to ask around. So if you see, for example, that there is, I worked on a project where this is real. This actually happened within the last year. If you see that there is a package that's called Salesforce for BlackBerry, and nobody is using a BlackBerry, yeah, you can get rid of it. So you need to start asking around. And you can also see, based on the app, you can also often see if there are permission sets, if there are licenses for it. You can tell. So you need to do a little bit of digging. It's not always obvious whether or not anyone is actually using it. Tim's got a question. What is the best way to remove an unneeded custom object? I have one, but it keeps giving me errors that I can't because of a parent-child relationship. So this is where you probably have a master-child relationship that's set up based on what you're describing. And it looks like another I'm guessing it's another object that is dependent on it. So you need to see what are the other objects that are connected to this particular object and simply switch it to a lookup versus a master. What is it? Master domain. Why am I drawing a blank right now? So you need to change it to a lookup. Then you can detach it, and then you should be able to remove that object. Let's see what else we have over here. I'm trying to be mindful of the time. Sorry, I didn't leave enough time for questions. Have you found a process or program that allows the admin to mass update the help text on fields? That is a really good question. There is nothing off the top of my head. I definitely have come across different tools that will help the admin mass update different field setting parameters, like field level security, to batch create new fields. I'm willing to bet that definitely never used one of these myself, but I'm willing to bet that I have come across, but when I do think of it, I will let you know. But nothing stands out right now. Tony added a comment over here. Doing the simple items live with your noisiest users is a very powerful experience. Yes. Helping them see that you can be responsive and resolve pain points quickly. 100%, Tony. Say it louder for the people in the back. Yes, but still make sure to do it in a sandbox. And when you're doing it in a sandbox, like even if it's a virtual experience, so you're remote with them and they're saying, oh yeah, I want to actually, I have this experience all the time where if it's just as quick and easy to do it instantly instead of jotting it down and then where did I put those notes and going back to it and then following up with them. So depending on how big or simple it is, a lot of times people don't want to see how you make the sausage. So depending on how simple it is, like if it's something like updating the page layout, creating an additional field, changing the label on a field, yes, by all means, you go ahead and do it in a sandbox one as they are watching. That is a very big deal. Aaron's got a question. Do you recommend an executive sponsorship for the group sessions? I have peers that have been yelled at for build versus a constructive discussion. Aaron, this is a really good conversation, really good question, because sometimes I would definitely make sure that you get executive buy-in before having these group therapy sessions, but I would not include the executive in these group therapy sessions because people will feel intimidated. They will filter what they're saying. And also there is very often a big disagreement where sadly the executive leader has no idea what the hell they're talking about because the executive leader just wants to see the high level metrics of how their team is performing against each other and against other teams. Whereas the folks who report into them, they need to know which prospects am I supposed to follow up with? Which deals am I supposed to work on? Like that will help me get me as a sales rep, get to the metrics that my senior leader cares about. So I would definitely not have them together, but I would have the conversation with executive leadership first. They might help identify some of the people to include in some of these conversations, but I would not have them in the same room when the folks, when the worker bees are venting. Let's see what other questions there are over here. Okay, Tim's got a question. How would you recommend archiving, deleting data within an org? We have integrations that create tasks, and we are approaching a data limit. Own backup. So I would definitely recommend exploring own backup, and you can archive records. So aside from having a backup, they also have an archiving product where it can allow you to take records or attachments that are in Salesforce, and you're essentially moving it out of Salesforce and putting it into the own backup platform. But from the end user experience, it is practically seamless. They don't even realize because the user interface back in Salesforce looks as if it is sitting natively in Salesforce, but on a particular screen, so on a particular record screen, etc., when they are clicking into those items that are archived and actually being served from the own backup platform, the users have no clue. So it's no longer taking up storage space in your Salesforce instance, and it's being served directly from own backup. Let's see if there are any other questions. How do you handle people who are scared to make choices? I ask everybody if they use something, everybody says no, but don't delete it. It makes it so much harder. Honestly, what I would do is if they say that, I would go ahead and two things. If it's a field on a page layout, then I would remove it from the page layout and wait for people to complain. And sadly, that's sometimes the only way you can do it. Another way that I would do it is put some X's or the word inactive as a prefix or suffix to that thing so that when they look at it, they can see that and it will sort of make them pause and ask a question about like, oh, why do we have these two X's in front of this custom object over here? That looks really weird. Oh, you're actually using it? Well, we didn't know. We were about to delete it. We were getting ready to delete that thing. So those are the very rudimentary but very effective ways that I have dealt with this in the past. I passed the admin certification exam on week two. On week 2 of support tickets, everything is customized, permission sets, objects, fields, sharing. How do I keep asking for help without looking useless? David, first of all, congratulations on passing the admin certification exam. Secondly, don't think of it that way whatsoever. You're not looking useless, just the opposite. By asking the appropriate questions, you are making it clear that you want to be prudent and you're trying to make sure that what you're doing serves the needs of the business users within the organization. So don't be shy about asking questions and make it clear that from your newbie perspective, new to the organization, I mean, new to the organization perspective, it appears that nobody's using it and it probably could be deleted. But before introducing harm, you want to make sure that you're actually helping everyone on the team. That's why you're asking these questions for clarification. People will actually appreciate you for that tremendously, because they will be happy that you're not just blindly deleting it 100%. Okay. Looks like we're good. We wrapped up. We're a little bit over on time. Thank you all for joining today. It was fantastic to see you. I hope you got value out of this content, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.